The sun had long dipped below the horizon, leaving the world draped in an oppressive darkness. I lay in bed, the silence of the night punctuated only by the occasional creak of the house settling. It was a familiar sound, one that had never bothered me before. But on this particular night, unease crawled through my mind like an unwelcome spider. I had always been sensitive to the atmosphere of my surroundings. Growing up in a small town, I knew the stories that whispered through the streets. Stories of missing persons, tragedies hidden behind cheerful facades, and secrets buried deep in the earth. I had heard tales of a woman who had vanished in the woods behind my childhood home, and her absence still haunted the townsfolk. The stories warned of an unseen presence, a shadow that stalked the living. As a child, I dismissed these tales, but as I grew older, my perspective shifted. I often wondered what it would be like to encounter something that could tear the veil of normalcy from my life, something that could drag me into the realm of the inexplicable. It wasn't until I returned to my childhood home as an adult that I learned how wrong I had been. My parents had moved away, leaving the old house behind, and I found myself alone in that empty space, determined to confront my fears. The first night, I felt an eerie calmness, as if the house itself welcomed me back. I drifted off to sleep, lulled by the familiar sounds of the wind rustling through the trees. But the following night was different. I awoke to the sensation of being watched. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the curtains. I strained to hear any sound, but the silence was absolute. Then a soft thud echoed from the hallway, sending a jolt of adrenaline through my veins. I held my breath, listening intently, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound came again, a slow, deliberate movement, as if something, or someone, was creeping through the house. I told myself it was nothing, a figment of my imagination. But as I lay there, the unease morphed into a suffocating dread. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet touching the cold floor. The chill wrapped around me like a shroud. I tiptoed to the doorway, peering into the dark hallway. My mind raced with possibilities, all of which I hoped were unfounded. The thudding noise had stopped, but I sensed a presence lurking just out of sight. I flicked on the light switch, the fluorescent bulb buzzing to life and illuminating the hallway. Nothing. The corridor stretched out before me, a stark reminder of my isolation. I glanced down at the floor, noting the shadows cast by the flickering light. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of movement at the far end, a fleeting shadow that seemed to dissolve into the walls. I blinked and it was gone. Panic surged through me. Was I really alone in this house? I forced myself to breathe, but each breath felt like a struggle. I turned back toward my room, but as I did, I heard it again. A whisper, soft and barely audible, echoing from the kitchen. My blood ran cold. Help. The voice was faint, almost indistinguishable from the sigh of the wind. It was a woman's voice, laden with desperation. It didn't sound like anyone I knew, yet it clawed at something deep within me. I hesitated, torn between the primal urge to flee and an inexplicable pull to investigate. I stepped cautiously toward the kitchen, each step weighed down by fear. The dim light from the hallway barely illuminated the space, casting elongated shadows that danced menacingly. The kitchen was empty, but the feeling of being watched intensified. I turned toward the back door, where the faint outline of the woods stood like a dark sentinel. Help me. The voice was louder now, more insistent. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I knew I had to find the source. As I reached for the door, a sudden crash echoed from behind me. I whirled around to see the cabinet doors swinging open, as if someone had slammed them shut. I stumbled back, my heart racing. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. Panic enveloped me. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking as I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the blackness, illuminating the kitchen but revealing nothing out of the ordinary. Help me. The voice now seemed to come from right beside me. I swung the light around, but there was no one there. I was alone, or was I? My mind spiraled into chaos, flooded with memories of the stories that haunted my childhood. Had I unwittingly awakened something? Desperate, I dashed to the front door, but it wouldn't budge. I pulled and yanked, but the handle remained stubbornly locked. The whispering grew louder, drowning out my thoughts, until it morphed into a blood-curdling scream that reverberated through the walls. I felt the floor beneath me tremble as if the house itself were alive, shaking in response to the terror. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sprinted toward the staircase, the only path that felt remotely safe. I rushed up the steps, my heart racing in time with the pounding of my feet. I reached the top and darted into the nearest room, slamming the door shut behind me. I pressed my back against it, listening intently for any signs of pursuit. Silence enveloped me once more, but the atmosphere was thick with dread. Then I heard it again, a scratching sound like nails on wood coming from the other side of the door. My heart raced as I slowly turned around, flashlight in hand. The beam of light fell on a dusty mirror, revealing my pale, terrified reflection. Suddenly, the scratching stopped, replaced by the soft creaking of the door as it began to slowly open. My breath caught in my throat and instinct took over. I lunged for the window, throwing it open and climbing out onto the narrow ledge. The cold night air bit at my skin as I precariously balanced on the edge of the house. I glanced back just in time to see a shadowy figure slip through the doorway, its outline indistinct but undeniably human. I felt the ground beneath me give way as I lost my balance and tumbled to the grass below. I scrambled to my feet and ran into the woods, the whispers of the woman echoing in my mind. I ran without stopping, desperate to escape the malevolence that had haunted me. Days later, I returned to the town, shaken but determined to uncover the truth. I learned that the woman's name was Lydia, a local who had vanished decades ago. The stories had been true, the whispers in the night were her cries for help. Even now, I can't shake the feeling that she still lingers in the shadows, waiting for someone to listen. And every time the darkness envelopes me, I hear her voice calling out, reminding me that some secrets are never truly buried.